We're back with Bob Bertrand of Fort Lauderdale.
Miami.
Oh, you actually live in Miami. You have an office in Fort Lauderdale.
Yeah.
Okay, looks like everything is good. So, about the Federalist Papers. What are the Federalist Papers?
Well, the time the country was being formed...
And look as much as you can into the camera.
The time the country was being formed, there were a group of people saying, let's join the colonies together. And there were a group of people led by Patrick Henry who would say...
I'm sorry, Bob, could you project?
Okay, the group of people saying, let's not join the colonies together because the same as cream comes to the top of milk, scum will come to the top of the cesspool. So they liked the individual states, but anyway, James Madison, Alexander Hamilton, and John Jay got together and they said, we're going to write a series of articles in the newspapers explaining how the government's going to work. In other words, this is to be a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. And they explained separation of powers. And, you know, there are three branches of government: legislative, executive, and judicial. And Madison, who was a political scientist, again, he was not a lawyer, stated, he said, if the effective control of all three separate branches of government get under the single same hands control, then we will have tyranny and oppression and corruption, and there will be nothing in the system to correct the problem. In other words, you couldn't go to the Nazi party and say you're killing Jews, because that was their purpose. You couldn't go to the slave owners and say you're abusing slaves, that's their purpose. You couldn't go to the Ku Klux Klan and saying you're abusing the blacks, that's their purpose. No, would you go to our corrupt legal system and saying we're getting abused in the system, because that's their purpose. They've taken over single same hands control. We would have the same problem in America today if the doctors were in charge of all three branches of government, because they would have us all going to the doctor's office, you know, 5 or 6 times a year, and the government would have to pay for it, you know, and they'd be making a lot of money from the system. We'd have bankers. We'd be paying maybe 30, 40, 50% interest rates, and people would be accountable to the bankers because they would control the purse strings, and we'd have tyranny again. In this case, we have lawyers in all three branches of government, and they're making laws to benefit the legal system, and you've got lawyers that are making millions and millions of dollars from the system that they created for themselves. You've got 2.5 million persons in jail in this country, more than any other country in the world. We are the highest bankrupt nation in the world. We're the highest debtor nation in the world. And you know, it's going to go on and on and on because there's no control of the system. We have, you know, there's...
So by educating the people on the Federalist Papers, what are you hoping to do?
Well, you're getting the concept of the Founding Fathers. And they're saying this is to be government of the people. We do not have representative form of government. The lawyers in this country represent 0.03% of the population. That's not even 1%. 0.03% of the population. Yet they represent 75% of the power in Washington, in Tallahassee, in your county governments, and throughout the system.
Now, since you've been on your campaign, you've actually were instrumental in reducing the number of lawyers in the Florida legislature.
Yeah, that's kind of funny. In 1986, when we basically started, 46% of our state senators were lawyers, and 32% of our state representatives are lawyers. As of today, we're down to 30% of our state senators are lawyers, so we've taken 16% off the top in there, and we're down to roughly 18% of our state representatives are lawyers, so we've taken 14% off the top in there. So between the two houses, we've taken off 30%. It's made a slight difference. It has made a slight difference, but not really as much as that. We've tried to get rid of no-fault car insurance, which is atrocious. The personal injury lawyers are ripping the system off like big time. And however, since the lawyers have got control, we got rid of this no-fault insurance and car accidents, and 2 months later the lawyers took up another way around it, and we're back on the system again. We've made inquiries about no-fault divorce. The lawyers that are on these committees don't even want to talk to us. They think that we're going to take, kill the goose that lays the golden egg. It's sad because, you know, there's so many people getting their families destroyed, and including some of the lawyers themselves, but they're so greedy for money, so they figure if they lose a fortune in one divorce, you know, they'll get it the next go around, and they'll they'll make up.
So they're making the laws, and the Bar Association is backing them up. Now here's the loaded question, because we know about a certain Nancy Grant who's challenging the Bar Association and the fact that they are not a government agency. What do you have to say about that?
Nancy Grant is a very dear person. She's a very sweet lady, and she's trying her best. But you know, they walk all over her. She speaks up about it. She's run against the lawyers in the legislature. She's spoken up to judges.
We're not talking about Nancy Grant, but what she's trying to do. She's saying the issue now, Bob. Yeah. The issue. The Bar Association is not a government agency. So what the hell are they doing? Saying that they are, or implying that they are, that all the rules of the court can't be done without them, so on and so forth. How did they do that?
Well, basically,
how did they?
What happened before in 1937 in the state of Florida? And we went down in the archives in the Florida Supreme Court and got all.
Juice, by the way.
No, thanks. In 1937, there was a wonderful law professor in Miami. His name is Herbert U. Feebleman. And he was a very outspoken gentleman, very, very principled. If he saw abuses, he would stand up and tell you the abuse. He used to go to the synagogues and talk about certain issues that got to be brought in the forefront, and fairness in the court systems. And that was his basic principle. And he didn't want people to get taken advantage of. His son-in-law became one of our congressmen. His name is William Lehman. But in 1937, the Florida Bar wanted to integrate with the Florida Supreme Court. They wanted to make lawyers accountable to the Bar Association and not accountable to the public. And at that time, the lawyers were supposed to be regulated by the Department of Business and Professional Regulation, and they could. That was the average person in the street that could look over the shoulders of the lawyer complaints and issue a complaint and or reprimand the lawyer in a certain way that he would have to stop doing what he's doing. But in any case, what happened, Herbert Feebleman in 1937 wrote a beautiful 3-page document, and he stated, under no circumstances can a bar association integrate with the Supreme Court because you will cause the judicial branch of government to be superior to the other two branches of government, eventually destroy the government state of Florida. The Florida Supreme Court under Chief Justice Glenn Jarrell was very, very strong in their opinion, and they said, we will never let this happen. And I went to Tallahassee. I did see a picture of Chief Justice Ben Terrell, and he looked like a very, very honorable gentleman and not afraid to stand for what he believed in. However, in 1949, the Florida Bar decided to go ahead and integrate with the Florida Supreme Court, and so they did it by secret and unsigned ballots. In other words, they wrote a letter, and I've got copies of the letter. You see it on our website, judicialaccountability.org. And on this, ballot, the president of the Florida Bar, who was Julius Parker, wrote a letter to all the lawyers in the state of Florida saying, fellas, it's time to integrate with the Florida Supreme Court. We're going to do this. You do not have to sign your name on the ballot. In other words, knowing that they would probably charge a treason if they signed their name, and they'd be able to pinpoint them and saying you did this, and even if it was against the will of the Florida Supreme Court in 1937, you're doing it and ignoring the law of the land. So anyway, they did it by secret and unsigned ballots. Of the 2,744 lawyers in the state of Florida in 1949, only 1,800 lawyers participated in the scam because they knew it was illegal. And even of then, only a certain small percentage voted to integrate, and when they played with the numbers, they said the majority were going to go ahead and do it, and nothing official.
Well, why is that illegal? It creates a nobility?
Right. What it is it goes against the ruling in 1937.
And the Constitution says that
checks and balances.
Yeah,
you can't have the fox guard in the hen house, and that's just a natural in society. Anything.
Yeah.
And so what they did in 19.
That's some water. That's nice water.
Thank you. Thank you. In any case, the Florida Bar integrated with the Florida Supreme Court. What they did was they privatized our judicial branch of government, and they've been able to use this privatized judicial branch of government to plunder the citizens of the state of Florida. They've got away with it. People have voiced opinions. Several lawyers and judges have written articles condemning the Florida Bar, telling them that they're out of line, and these judges and lawyers probably get a little bit of rough spots on the sidelines when they're talking to these people.
And other states followed suit?
All the states are integrated. The whole system is crooked, corrupt.
So what do you want Congress to do? Stop that?
Congress can't do anything because there are lawyers. It's got to be the will of the people. In other words, if the people
If the people petitioned big time and did like Al Sharpton did the other week, and got busloads of people to walk around that judicial department building. What building is that again? The Cannon something building.
I'm not too sure which one.
You know, I mean, just got all these people tens of thousands of people to walk around the building, and even the new.
What happens? The unfortunate part about it is the very unfortunate part about it is the
Department of Justice building.
Yeah.
That's what it was.
But what happens is the news media is very, very corrupt at the same time. They're in bed with these people.
Yeah. They're really half the problem, aren't they? The news media.
Because they won't tell you the truth. They won't tell you half the truth. You got to.
Why is that? Why would?
Well,
how can they
all
maintain
these
that
news
influence?
corporations are controlled by lawyers and lawyer foundations. All your universities today are controlled by lawyers and lawyer foundations. So they're all in bed together. And the unfortunate part about it is that as long as these lawyers have the control, they're not about to give it back to the people. They're not about to give it up to anybody, because once you've stolen something, you know, someday you may have to pay reparations. And right now in South Africa, there's been so many injustices in South Africa that this Bishop Tutu, they started these truth courts. And these truth courts, they're rewarding various people that have been ripped off by the system. They're giving them, you know, $4,000 or $5,000 per issue because the people were so badly ripped off. And I hope someday along the line that some of these, you know, fathers and families that were ripped off by crooked and corrupt lawyers and judges, I hope they have to pay back reparations, because it's a tremendous injustice.
But they give themselves judicial immunity.
Well, this is exactly.
Is that illegal? Is that
probably
unconstitutional?
illegal? But again, you know, those that make the laws are, you know, that's where their problem is. Those that know the rule make the rules.
Okay. Let's talk about the rules. As you know, there's a review of the concerning complaints against judges by the Judicial Conference. They're having a review of the Judicial Conduct and Disability Act of 1980. When the official entities reviewed this act, the Breyer Commission in particular, they admitted that there were a lot of shortcomings concerning, for instance, the fact that 99 and plus of all complaints against judges are summarily dismissed. What would you like to see come out of this review? Let me first, before you answer, let me give you some background. I testified, I was one of 3 Americans that testified in front of the Judicial Conference in Brooklyn, New York. I brought down Dr. Richard Cordero, who was a reformist lawyer, who is a reformist lawyer, and also we had Professor Hellman testify, who worked for the Breyer Commission. He basically was explaining that there still needs to be a lot of repairing of the Act to make it function properly. Now, when I got up there, I said that breaking the law is unethical, and breaking the law should always, always, always be subject to review, and that you cannot dismiss the complaint on their pronounced fact that it's merits related to the decision. So therefore, since it's related to the decision of a court, we couldn't possibly approach it. But I'm saying that you ask any American, breaking the law should always be subject to review. They are wrong. They are only creating protectionism, so on and so forth. What do you think about my point of view?
You're totally correct in what you're saying, but it's like, you know, hoping for pie in the sky. It's not going to happen. These people are not about to give up the power they stole from the people. The only way something good can happen, and I'm really hoping that we can make a difference, is those Federalist Papers we put in all the schools all across the country. This is Merriam-Webster took the original documents of Federalist Papers and put them in modern language so anybody at the grade 11 reading level can read it. They can get these Federalist Papers off Amazon.net and the internet. They can get it in the bookstores.
It's on your site, constitutionalguardian.com.
Right.
You want to say that again?
Again, constitutionalguardian.com. It's the word Constitution, ALGuardian.com. And one of the things, the word Constitution Guardian comes from the expression at the fall of the Roman Empire. There was a Roman senator. And of course, at that time, the lawyers were replacing the centurions to run the government, and the whole Roman Empire was collapsing. And there was a Roman senator that was going through the streets of Rome crying out, "Quisus custodes, ipsus custodes." In other words, who shall guard the guardians themselves? And the answer is, we the people shall be the guardians of the Constitution, because we're the people that are, the government is supposed to be run by the people, and it's not supposed to be a government of the lawyers.
It's a limited government.
Exactly.
It's limited.
But the thing is, we have so much government now, and the laws are so ambiguous and they're so multiple. I mean, law books are, it's sick. I was on a radio talk show with Larry Beecraft, who's a constitutional law professor at University of Alabama in Huntsville. And Larry specialized in tax laws. And he had me explaining separation of powers and checks and balances. He said, I totally agree with you. He said, we don't have a constitutional form of government. And he said, one of the sad parts about it, he said, in the whole taxation system, it's probably unconstitutional, and the whole system is wrought with fraud. He said, so I asked him, I said, if you were to take 10 of the top tax lawyers in this country and do a large return, what would the answers be? Would there be some variance? He said there'd be a tremendous amount of variance in the amount of money that was owed on this one case. He said, and each one of them in his own merits would be right. He said, the thing is so vague, and yet each one of them can try a different part of it, and nothing can happen. He said the whole system is fraught with ambiguity because it's written by lawyers.
We need a constitutional convention that can be more specific. Let's talk about the Constitution. Article 3, was it Section 10? A judge, I don't know, section, I'm not exactly sure of the section. A judge may hold office during times of good behavior. What do you have to say about good behavior?
That's, again, those are things that are important, but we can't even get to that point until you get back to the basis of separation of powers and checks and balances. You'd like to say, you'd like them to do this and this and this. Everybody would like apple pie and ice cream and everything else sort of like this, but it's not going to happen, because unless you get back to the basic roots of separation of powers and checks and balances, So
you're saying separation of powers means that the Congress should do a lot more to go after these corrupt judges?
They should if they were the right people. But if you got lawyers, they're not going to go after their own buddies. See, in other words, these people are in bed together, and they go to the same law schools, and they're all this. They're not going to betray each other. There's a pact between these people. In other words, it's called CYA.
Yeah, but that's what you're saying in general. I know that that's the reality.
You got to have a different.
But in general, separation of powers doesn't mean that the powers are so much separate, and that there should be judicial independence. So when a judge breaks the law, his buddies can say, "We have judicial independence, and we're protecting this judge." But instead, Congress's function is to go after these judges. I mean, that's written in the Constitution, right, that they have the power to impeach a judge. It's extremely difficult, because then it has to pass committees, it has to pass subcommittees, then it has to go to the House, it has to be voted by every member of the House, and then it goes to the Senate, it has to be voted by the Senate, they pass it, it goes to the President, he can veto it or not, and then it goes back to the Senate for 2/3 majority. How can you ever impeach a judge under those
circumstances? It's a waste of time. All these things are set up as roadblocks towards the thing.
But does the Constitution say that the judiciary itself should have play a much greater role within its own committees to undertake the definition of good behavior? Breaking the law is bad behavior. Right. Or are you saying that breaking the law is good behavior?
Well, this is what it is. I mean, this is what lawyers do. They change from black to white and white to black. And when the lawyer is finished with it, your head is spinning, because he's done, shifted so many times.
Oh, but he can't fool the American people. Oh, I mean, we know what good behavior is. We know what bad behavior is. When breaking the law, these guys are hired to enforce the law, and they just break the law, and they think nothing about breaking the law.
But in your courtrooms in America today, if you ever read the oath of office that all lawyers swear to in a courtroom, it's like God talking to Jesus. But no lawyers ever follow the oath of office that they swear to tell the truth, not to mislead the jury.
Honor the Constitution.
Honor the Constitution and honor people. They're there for one reason, and one is if they have to murder, they get the murder back in the street.
But when they violate it,
and there's no, you know, in every courtroom in the state of Florida, there's a sign above the judge's head. It says, "We who labor here seek only the truth." Right. Yet the only person in that courtroom who's not required to swear to tell the truth are lawyers. They do 95% of the testimony in the courtroom, of the talking.
That's
and if
illegal.
you find a lawyer,
that's illegal.
Exactly. But if you find a lawyer that lied in your case, and you take it to you tell the judge says, I'm not able to make a judgment here. You take it to the Florida bar, they dismiss it. I mean, 98 in the state of Florida, for example, last year, there were more than 10,000 citizens that had enough nerve after they were ripped off and kicked around and abused, that they had enough guts to at least write a complaint to the Florida bar and explain how they've been ripped off and what the lawyer done to them. And this is all kinds of things they've done to them. Stolen money out of trust accounts, blackmail, lying, cheating, sexual harassment, you name it, they've done it. And last year, because the fox guards the hen house, 9,700 of the 10,000 British are told to go home, you got no probable cause, the lawyer didn't rip you off after all. There are two kinds of lawyers in every courthouse. One that knows the law, the other knows the judge.
Now these committees that are on these judicial review committees for the judges and committees for the lawyers, they're supposed to be made of 50% citizens. Are they in the state of Florida?
Never.
Well, they are in Connecticut.
Well,
but who finds the citizens?
There you are. That's exactly. You know, Stalin used to say something that was very important. He said, "It's not who votes that counts; it's who counts the votes that really matters." It's not who votes that counts, but who counts the votes, and that's the people. And this is exactly what you got in your courthouse. You've got exactly, these people are there. They're there to protect their own turf, and they're not going to let their buddies down. And they're going to be there covering their own thing to make sure everybody, it's all CYA. All right across the board, CYA. I've been to the chief judge, I've reported things, I've done all through the system, and the chief judge would just roll his eyes and say, well, you know, I'm only one person, I can only do a certain amount, you know, my powers are really limited. I'd like to say that I could do this, but I really can't do that. And that's the whole system. So you don't have the checks and balances, and these people are totally unaccountable. Totally unaccountable. It's the same thing when complaints against judges. Again, of the I think there's what 7,000 complaints. 7,000 complaints last year against complaints against judges.
Nationwide.
99% dismissal rate. So you go
99.
Yeah,
and it's higher. And it's higher.
And it's a joke. But
so I interviewed a bunch of interesting reformists. One of them is Elena Sassower. Ever hear of her?
Yes.
And she goes, it's really about the corrupt decision.
Oh yeah.
That they don't, you know, they say that, oh, we're just not happy with the decision.
Right.
But the fact is that we want reviewed the fact that it's a corrupt decision.
Yeah.
And that you shouldn't bring in this concept of merit relatedness, because the same laws they expect us to abide by, oh, they're off the hook.
Exactly.
They're off the hook. The rules that they throw you in jail for, oh, no problem. You know, we just simply could give ourselves immunity. You can't talk about it. You can't bring it up because it's merits related to the decision.
Well, this is the sad part about it, you know, and the real thing, Francis, is if we don't do anything about this, we have to blame ourselves. We have a chance of making a difference. Everybody in this country knows what the lawyer's about. If you ask 9 out of 10 people on the street, do you trust lawyers? The answer is usually, hell no, they're a bunch of crooks. And if you keep putting those crooks in Tallahassee and in Washington and in your state capitals, you only have to expect bad decisions, and you'll continue the corruption.
Now they know what's going on, and could you please tell that story about how you found this report that was made by tell us who, and they were trying to bury it, but you found it. You know what I'm talking about? They had this report showing that that there was some real problems.
Oh yes.
Okay, so
the funniest thing happened. This was a report by the legislature, and it was a report in the legislature made in 1980, in which the legislature took testimony from various citizens who went to Tallahassee and reported the horror stories that they'd gone through in the legal system. And believe it or not, the legislature did a beautiful job of making this report, put it all together, and the legislators were all supposed to get copies of it. However, some of the lawyers saw the report, and they decided they better not let the legislature read it, so they put it in the back storage room.
What was the name of the report?
It's called the Regulatory Reform Committee. The Regulatory Reform Committee, and on the state of affairs in the legal system in the state of Florida.
And you have a copy today?
I have a copy. I don't have a copy with me today, but I'll get you a copy. And the report was a scathing report, and the legislature decided not to distribute it. They decided to just bury it, keep it in the back room, and kind of go from there. One of our people that were involved in our group, who happened to be a lawyer, her son is a lawyer, her daughter-in-law is a lawyer, and she went to Tallahassee and complained about how she'd been ripped off, her building was stolen from her, so the secretary felt sorry for her. She said, you know, it's so sad, but we had a report, but it was never distributed. So she gave a copy of the report to the person, and the person came back to Miami with the report. And I called Tallahassee and I said, could we get more copies? And he said, yeah, we have a whole storage room. They were supposed to be given to the legislators, but the Florida Bar decided they didn't want the legislators to read it. So sure enough...
Hold it. Say that slowly. The Florida Bar decides they don't want the legislature to read the truth.
Exactly. And
so they sealed it in a public report. Let's get this straight.
Exactly.
Okay?
And they just put it in the back storage room.
How illegal is this?
Well, it's totally illegal, but the thing is, you see, those that have the gold make the rules. These people are in Tallahassee making laws to benefit themselves. It's all...
These people can still be held accountable for this.
You'd like to say that. That'd be like maybe Alice in Wonderland. But the real thing is, whatever they've done, they've got away with it. And they've covered their tracks. And there's certain rules and regulations that they've made to basically cover their tracks. They're not going to be accountable for anything. And you'd like to say it can happen.
This is criminal.
Totally. The reason they call it the criminal justice system is because it's operated by criminal lawyers and criminal judges. And it's criminal because the product, it was quite interesting. I'm on a program called Truth Radio. Mm-hmm. And there's a police officer, his name is Jack McLam, and he's very much involved in the Patriot movement. He's a decorated police officer out in Arizona. And he's out there in Kamaya, Idaho, and he does a program called Truth Radio. And he's had me about maybe 7 or 8 times on different radio talk shows. And the funniest thing happened, he plays these programs usually on Sunday night. And so one Monday morning I got a call, and a fellow called me, and he said he was identified himself and told me, he said, I've heard you several times on Truth Radio, but he said, I was finally able to break through the system, and I got one of the board operators got your telephone number off the one of the tapes, and was able to, and he gave it.
In a nutshell.
In a nutshell, here's a prison guard who'd been in the prison guard for about 30 some years. And he stated very plainly, he said at least 20 to 25% of the prisoners that are put in our jail system today have been set up by crooked police officers, crooked lawyers, crooked judges. And he said, and they're in there, and he said, you know, every weekend we have lawyers, appellate lawyers, that go to the prison, and he said they solicit the relatives of these people, and he said, you know, they say, if you give me $10,000 or give me $20,000, I'll try to get your son back out of prison. I'll try to do this and I'll try to do that. He said, it is so pathetic when I see what's going on in our prison system today. He said, I've been there for 30 years. But he said, I definitely want to get copies of that book to the Federalist Papers in modern language. He said, I want to give it to all the prison guards so that we'll understand the system better. And he said, the book called The Underground Lawyer, he said, I definitely want to get that, because he said that it seems to explain the corruption in our whole legal system. And again, that book is written by Michael Lewis Binns. You can get it on Amazon.net and the internet. You can get it in any of your Barnes and Noble.
Now, mind you, you're not making any profit saying this.
No, the thing is, the book should be put in every bookshelf in this country so people can understand the corruption.
You just want the truth out there, and he had an inside story on the truth.
Exactly. And the thing is, I'd like to see people, take more of an interest in voting and understand separation of powers. I'd like to see the book called The Federalist Papers in Modern Language by Mary Webster. This is Mary Webster, the Webster Dictionary family. This is a person that's trying very hard to enlighten the American public. Her great-great cousin was Noah Webster. Another great cousin was Daniel Webster. Her grandfather had been the governor of Connecticut. His name is John Webster. Mary Webster is her mother was related to Miles Standish, one of the persons that signed the original Mayflower Compact. And they can get this book if people take an interest in what we're saying here today. If you get 3 people to go to every library and request the book, the library has to buy the book and put it on the shelf. There's a Dr. Thomas Sewell, who was the chief economist at Stanford University in California. They passed a law in the state of California to make it mandatory reading for the students to read the Federalist Papers. And that would be a big step forward, and they say it's starting out there anyway. The problem is most people can understand, they don't understand the original Federalist Papers because they're written in the old colonial style English language, and there's like different interpretations that people have, and they kind of go from there. But I think if people get that book, The Federalist Papers in Modern Nights, it's written at a grade 11 reading level. And Mary Webster, she's a professor of translation at the University of Iowa for many years. She's a published author. She's done an awful lot of work into putting those Federalist Papers in modern language. She's got nice letters from the United States Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas.
And she's coming out with a second edition now, reviewed by a distinguished lawyer.
Right, and the thing is, I believe once you get that, you can make a difference. So we had a bill in Tallahassee last year by the Silverhead legislators. These are senior citizen legislators who've read the book and understood what we're talking about. And by the way, this year they're supporting Ron Paul. And that was quite interesting because he wrote a testimonial letter to the underground lawyer endorsing the book.
Can you read that? Can you read that to the public?
Sure.
There it is. There's the back of the book. Can you read it?
And Ron Paul, he said, the case studies outlined in this book should make you angry and determined to change a system that has made us a much poor country and wreaked such havoc on the lives and liberties of so many good Americans. This is Ron Paul, a medical doctor and United States Congressman 1976 to 1984, and from U.S. Congressman 1997 to the present.
Now what's going on with Ron Paul? Why the hell is it again a media trick? They're not letting him part of the debates, even though he's gotten overwhelming support. Even though from the public, he's got more money to spend than any other Republican. Well, what's going on there?
Ron Paul is not part of the establishment. In other words, he speaks the truth, and he tells it as it is. He hasn't got any special interest or axe to grind, and he's just a decent guy. As a matter of fact, I met him for the first time just about 2 weeks ago.
Really?
And down in Miami, and there were maybe about 300 people on the streets, lining the streets and with the Ron Paul signs, and the news media kept away from there. I mean, I think there was 1 or 2 Spanish television stations, but the regular news media kept away from it because they blackballed him. He's not part of the establishment, and unfortunately he speaks the truth, and maybe a lot of the news media don't necessarily want the truth, they just want to do things in a spectacular manner.
Tell us the John McCain story.
Oh yes, John McCain came to Miami. He wrote a book, quite an interesting book, and about his own family background and that sort of thing. And he came to Miami, and he went to the Books and Books bookstore in Coral Gables. And the funniest thing, it's a beautiful bookstore. It's all wood paneled. Everything is very first class. And so this one Sunday morning after Mass, I decided to go down there, and he had made a speech on television. He said, we need to stop the special interest. He said, a congressman comes to work in the morning, and he's going to vote a certain way, and 3 or 4 different people walk in his office at the day, and maybe a little bit of money changes hands, and the guy changes position 180 degrees by 5 o'clock that night. He said, these are special interests that shouldn't be doing what they're doing, and they're paying off our congressman. And
so you were delivering flyers. You got to put this in a nutshell.
Anyway, what happened is that when he said stop the special interest, I made up a bumper sticker, and basically stated, stop the special interest. Don't vote for lawyers because they're the biggest special interest in the country. And so I went to the bookstore right after Mass on Sunday morning, lined up there, and there must have been about 45, 50 people in the lineup. I went around and passed out my flyers why you shouldn't vote for lawyers. And finally, when I got up to Ron Paul and I had my T-shirt on...
No, John McCain.
I'm sorry, John McCain.
Say the sentence from scratch.
And when we got in the lineup, worked my way to the front of the lineup as progression hit, and Senator McCain happened to be sitting at a desk autographing each one of the books. When I got there and he saw my T-shirt, it says, "Restore the Constitution, don't vote for lawyers." He stood up right away and he walked over. He said, "This is my kind of man." And Miami Herald happened to be there, and they came over to take a picture. And he shook hands and he said, "Take a couple of pictures." He said, "This is the kind of people that we need more of, to stand up and not be afraid to speak up about the system." And so I said, "Senator McCain," I said, "the Miami Herald will not publish this picture because they're part of the special interest too. They're all in bed together." So he kind of laughed. He said, "Well, let's hope maybe they print this one anyway." So anyway, but I finished after he autographed the book I was getting, and his chauffeur came and said, "Listen, I'd like to speak to you. Just Senator McCain wants to talk to you, and so please wait here for a few minutes." So I went around the bookstore and I passed out my flyers and about separation of powers and checks and balances, about our website. And so anyway, about 50 minutes later, the chauffeur came over and said, "Senator McCain wants to speak to you." So we walked out to his car. He's waiting to go back to the airport. And so we walked back and he said, he said, "Your website is very, very interesting." And he said, "Your continuation of the Federalist Papers really have got people in Washington really thinking." He said, "My gosh," he said, "when you guys put those papers on Washington," he said, "for days and days everybody was commenting, who are these people? How big are they? How big is their website? How much readership do they got in the thing?" He said, everybody in a quandary. So he said, "If you ever need a favor or something like that, don't be afraid to come to my office or call me." He said, maybe I can lead you, do something in the right direction to help you out." He said, "Your website is brilliant." And that's constitutionalguardian.com. The other website that we're working in conjunction is called judicialaccountability.org. And they're a group of psychologists and book writers and Christians and Jews, and they support our other websites called uniformdivorce.com. That's uniformdivorce.com. And they explain the illegalities of the whole no-fault divorce system and how it was started in the state of Florida, knowing full well that it was going to be a big money bonanza for the lawyers and the judges, and who were all in bed together anyway.
Okay, got 5 minutes. What do you want to talk about?
The main thing I'd like to talk about is...
Yeah, take it.
Let's take another glass here. Okay. The main thing I'd like to talk about is how people can get active. And people can, if they want to, support what we're talking about, and they can go to political meetings. And when a lawyer stands up to speak, the first thing you're going to say, "Do you want to really represent us? You'll have to resign from the Florida Bar Association or your prospective Bar Association and pledge your allegiance to the public. You cannot be a member of two parts of government at the same time. And since all the bar associations are integrated with the Supreme Court, that means they're a one body, and you are violating the law and the spirit of the law, because in the state of Florida, Article 2, Section 3 of the Florida State Constitution says very plainly, you cannot be a member of two parts of government at the same time." And it would be the same as, if people say, "Well, I'm not really active as a lawyer." It doesn't matter. If you were a member of that bar association, you've already pledged your allegiance to the Florida Supreme Court, and you've got to follow that pledge of allegiance, or you get disbarred and you get disgraced. So either you can't be a Catholic and a Protestant at the same time, or you can't be a Christian and a Jew at the same time. You're either one or the other. Whatever you are, as long as you're honest and do the best you can, that's fine. But
well, I have to bring this up. Starting in 2 days, 2008, Connecticut waited its 20-year cycle for a constitutional convention for its Connecticut Constitution.
Good.
So what would you like to see us do in that?
I'd like to see the public testify about the system before a constitutional revision commission and show the inequities of the system, because once enough people, in other words, if the people lead, the leaders will follow. If the people sit back and do nothing, that's exactly what they get, is nothing. So people testify, and I'd ask people if they can, we have the book on CD-ROM, and make as many CD-ROMs as you can get, send them around the country, and get people educated. Again, you must understand separation of powers, checks and balances, and avoid the same hands corrupt control that we have today. It's a sad testimony to see that people are not, we spend millions and millions and millions of dollars in education, and they don't know. The students don't know even about the Federalist Papers.
Let alone the Constitution.
Yeah, and the thing is, the Federalist Papers were the background of the country. That was because the anti-Federalists were probably correct in saying, you know, let's not join the colonies together because the same as cream comes to the top of milk, scum will come to the top of the cesspool.
The Federalist Papers were an explanation of the principles behind the Constitution.
Exactly, exactly. And the thing is, if we don't understand them and we don't have a dialogue and discuss it, then we have a serious problem. And the thing is, those Federalist Papers, especially Merriam-Webster's Federalist Papers in modern language, that should be put in every high school in the country, and so that people can understand separation of powers, checks and balances, and avoid the same hands corrupt control that we got today.
Okay, let's hold up the book, and then that's pretty much it for today.
Right.
So
this is a copy of the book. This is the cover of the book. You can get it on Amazon.net and the internet. You can get it at any Barnes & Noble bookstore. You can, if you buy them by the case, you can get probably a special price. Again, it's a matter of getting it out, put it in all the high schools. If people go to the curriculum department in the school system and demand, because I know several homeschoolers now are putting it in as part of their curriculum, and I know people take this book to the curriculum department and demand that they put it in the schools, we can make a difference. And it's showing up in Miami. A lot of the students that are talking about the Federalist Papers, and they have contests now in the school system discussing the Federalist Papers and some of the content in there. So it's a matter of getting the students involved, and again, they say an educated consumer is your best customer. And if the people lead, the leaders will follow. The people got to stand up and lead. That's what make a difference.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, then. I appreciate it. But